DeSantis is not a good person. I'm perfectly fine saying that DeSantis is on my short list of people that I'm perfectly fine calling evil. Guys, we got to talk about Ron DeSantis again, because we're always going to be talking about Ron DeSantis, because the dude cannot stop doing absolutely dumb stuff. I know, chat would rather me be doing more Eggman impressions during stream. They would enjoy that so much more, but no, that's not what we got to talk about. But we'll talk about Ron in just a second. Before we get into that, let's go ahead and get into the fan art section. The first one here is from Zervis. Suris going Super Saiyan after responding to more Young Earth creationist proof. Well, I do look angry. The next one we have is from Skiller the Bean 2000. So here's a work in progress of the doll repaint of Suris' short hair model that I'm doing. Pretty happy with it so far. Well, I guess we will have to see the other work-in-progress updates on that as they go. As always, everybody, thank you all for your fan art submissions. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future video, the best way to do so is to drop into the fan art section of the Discord. For those of you who don't know how to get to it, the description of the video should have a link to it, and also you can hit the Discord command on Twitch, and that will get you to it as well. Either way, will get you to the Discord. That said, guys, DeSantis, the friend to all, we have things to talk about. Ron DeSantis seeks a $98 million fund for Florida's own personal military. Yep. He wants an army of Florida men. He wants an army of Florida men. You know, I think that while the idea of an army of Florida men running around literally piloting super terrestrial alligators is hilarious. Literally, Florida State Guard's thing here has an alligator there. Let us alone. As hilarious as that is to me. Come on, let's not get an army of Florida men. As lawmakers in Tallahassee consider Governor Ron DeSantis' budget proposal this season, they will also be deciding whether to approve a steep funding increase to establish Florida's own branch of the military. You know, we've got the Air Force, we've got the Space Force, we've got the Navy, the Army, the Marines, and then we have Florida. Aren't you just so excited to be part of the Florida branch of the military? Man, branch of the military so strong that a small gust of wind will destroy its entire infrastructure. I lived through Hurricane Ivan. That was fun. Anyways, the State Guard was DeSantis announced the revival of the Florida State Guard last June. It was dismantled at the end of World War II. He said the Florida State Guard will be comprised of Floridians, and it will be assigned to assist and help only Floridians. DeSantis said in a news conference last June that it will not be subject to be mobilized by the federal government, and the federal government cannot impose policies or penalties on the Florida State Guard. DeSantis claimed the Florida National Guard, which is governed by the federal government and was created for helping rescue people after hurricanes, was not providing enough resources to the state. News 6 investigated and found the National Guard's own records show that they have capped the number of Florida National Guard troops at 12,000 since 1958, which resulted in Florida ranking 53 out of 54 states and territories when it comes to the number of troops per capita. Major General John Haas, the Assistant Adjutant General for the Florida National Guard, admitted to the shortcomings during a recent meeting of the Florida Senate Committee on Military and Veterans Affairs. He said, "We will be challenged as long as we are undersized, or we are an undersized formation," he told the committee. 22 other states have supplemented the National Guard with their own state guard forces. In the first year, the legislature approved $10 million to restart the Florida State Guard. News 6 has uncovered DeSantis now wants to increase that to $98 million this year. $19 million being allocated to member onboarding, training, and protective equipment, $3 million to maritime equipment and operations, $50 million to aviation equipment and operations, $22 million to maritime and aviation storage facilities, and then, of course, $1.3 million for program administration. In his budget, this request to the Florida legislature, he asked lawmakers to approve $53 million to purchase marine and aviation. That we already went over this. The governor is also asking that the number of state guard troops be expanded from 400 to 1,500 positions. His office claimed that more than 1,200 people have applied so far. He said the purpose of the State Guard is to be a force multiplier for our existing emergency response capabilities and a force multiplier for our National Guard. His comments come during a question and answer session in a recent meeting of the Senate Appropriations Committee in Tallahassee. I just pronounced that really wrong just because people are going to comment about how I pronounced it in the comments section, and honestly, I'm here for it. Having this additional resource that's under our control rather than waiting for additional allocations from the federal government, we feel is very important to increasing our readiness for emergencies. He says we need to support what they are doing here, said State Senator Victor Torres. Torres is the vice chair of the Senate Committee on Military and Veterans Affairs, and he told News 6 that he does have some concerns about the revival of the Florida State Guard. He said, I don't want this money for the State Guard to go to border security. I don't want it to be implemented, where they're going to use it to go to Texas or the border. We got our own issues here in the state of Florida. Florida Senators Rick Scott and Mark Rubio sent letters to the last year asking for a review of the number of troops allocated to Florida. News 6 contacted the Bureau asking for if a review was underway or under consideration. Spokeswoman Nahuko McFadden said the Florida National Guard received 167 new force structure authorizations for a light-medium truck company and 165 new authorizations for a chemical battalion over the last 2 years. National Guard Bureau planners continuously discuss force structure needs with all states, territories, and the District of Columbia. Force structure requirements depend largely on the need of the Army and the Air Force and congressionally mandated end strength and funding with consideration to demographics, supportability, sustainability, and the balancing of capabilities across the country. States also have the ability to provide mutual assistance during natural disasters and domestic response through emergency management assistant compacts. So here's my fear. On the one hand, technically, DeSantis is right. Florida is a hotbed for natural disasters. It's located on the coast, and having been through hurricanes that have ripped through, waiting on National Guard responses sometimes is a little too late for some people. Having a mobilized military force in Florida is not the worst thing in the world if its job is only, and I repeat, only, to help provide assistance during those national disasters. Here's the thing, though. That's not what I think is going to happen. What I think is going to happen is Ron DeSantis is going to utilize this newly bolstered military force in Florida in order to make sure that things like, protests against the different bills that he signs in that are anti-LGBTQ and anti-woman, he's going to use it to try to silence those. We saw police brutality on the lines of BLM protests repeatedly over the last 2 years. So seeing somebody like Ron DeSantis, who has a known track record of being a torturous asshole, in control of a military force like this, I don't trust it. Even if on paper it's only meant to support a certain thing, that's not what I think is going to happen. That's not what I think is going to happen. Because here's the thing. DeSantis is not a good person. I'm perfectly fine saying that DeSantis is on my short list of people that I'm perfectly fine calling evil. Between the bills that he's comfortable signing into law and some of the other stuff that he's been, let's see here. Ron DeSantis was a military officer during the height of the War on Terror, and he was often seen running on the beach of Guantanamo Bay. I don't know everything that went on in Guantanamo Bay, but I do know that Ron DeSantis knew about the torture programs when he worked there. There's a certain level of he was just doing his job that I'm sure you can use as a justification for this, but I have a very hard time squaring guy who literally ran torture chamber shit in one form or another and supported it with guy who will very, very adequately use military resources that are allocated to him in the millions. Zoo Potato, thank you for redeeming your points for Oh, well, the armistice is over. I can actually do those now. Just following orders was already deemed to be not a good excuse almost 80 years ago. Yep. So, it's very, very hard. It's very, very hard. for me to see something like this and go, oh yeah, this will actually be used well, and this will be used responsibly by Ron DeSantis, person who signed in the Don't Say Gay bill, person who has been trying to get information on how many different ways he can cut funding from trans people's health care. I don't know. I have this sneaking suspicion that he's probably not going to use this funding in a way that is actually going to benefit most Floridians, but is instead going to push his own particular torturous, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it, fairly evil agenda. That's just me. That's just me. DeSantis served as a lawyer in the military when he was there. He was stationed in Guantanamo Bay and served as a trial counsel in the office of the staff judge advocate at Guantanamo. He did that for at least 6 months. I don't know if I trust that guy. I'm actually fairly certain I don't trust that guy at all. That's just me. I say this because, well, when we're talking about Ron DeSantis, we're talking about someone who, during his time in Guantanamo as a lawyer, he received complaints about force feedings that would happen to the prisoners there. Ahmed Abdel Aziz, who was a former detainee, said that DeSantis introduced himself to him by saying that he was here to ensure that he was treated humanely. But allegedly, DeSantis personally observed one of the force feedings and laughed at him. Adafi remembers vomiting on DeSantis. There are multiple former officers and attorneys that have said that it is possible that these allegings are actually... Adafi also said that he and many other prisoners confided in DeSantis about terrible conditions at Guantanamo Bay, including things like guards desecrating the Quran in front of them, and incessant noise that made it impossible for them to be able to sleep. And DeSantis didn't do anything to try to fix these issues. In fact, actually, the issues got worse. Most of the prisoners in Guantanamo Bay who interacted with DeSantis believe that he actually weaponized the complaints of the prisoners in order to help increase their suffering. He listened to the things that made them cry and then tried to make sure that those things could be perpetuated more. I don't need to explain that Guantanamo Bay is a horror show. But whenever you're wondering whether or not Ron DeSantis will responsibly do something in the middle of Congress, ask yourself, what things did he do in Guantanamo Bay? Which people did he hurt, and how, and why? That's just where I sit there. And maybe I'm off track here, but I don't think I am. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Who knows? Maybe we'll all accept that YouTube comment sections are their own form of Gitmo. As always, everybody, insert end of video tagline here.